Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time you're watching this special edition of Dermot's Democratic Rants, which we're delighted today to have a special guest, Mr. Ronan McGREEVY, who's a journalist with the Irish Times. He's an eminent historian and the author of numerous books, including Whenever the Firing Line Extends, Ireland and the Great War and the Western Front, The Great Hatred, the assassination of the Field Marshal Sir Henry Wilson MP, the kidnapping, the story of the Don Tidy kidnapping in Leitrim in the 80s, Roll of Honour, which is a book about the students of the various universities in Ireland who participated in World War One. And also, he's just finished a biography of the great Sean Lemass, the former Taoiseach. So welcome, Ronan. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much, Dermot and Philip, for having me.
That's it. So we're just going to have a little talk. Before we get to the serious stuff, we're going to talk about football. Two subjects. One, Ronan, I know you were present in the Aviva on Saturday night at the draw with Hungary. So could we just get your comments on that? How you think it went, and how bad was the first half and how good was the second?
The first half was as bad as the second half was good. I think basically the manager set up to keep it tight. We have no natural wingers in the team, the team that he started with. I think he was hoping to sort of have a bit of a cagey half an hour and then just see where the weaknesses are in the Hungarian team. Obviously, after 2 minutes, that all went out the window. Matt Doherty, who, as Spurs fans, you'll know well, and Ireland fans, played the Hungarian striker on side and gave away a goal. And then you have 13 minutes later, Doherty's just not getting back in quickly enough. He concedes a corner and we're 2-0 down. And after that, you would have expected him to fold, but they were poor for the rest of the first half. They were rattled, but my God, what a comeback in the second half. Obviously, getting that goal after 48 minutes is great. Then the sending off, which is richly deserved, but they were rattled before that anyway. And then we just pummeled them for the next 40 minutes. I haven't seen a performance like that from an Ireland team against a top class, a very good international side. For as long as I can remember, I'm thinking back as far as England in 1991 at Wembley, where we just seemed to own the ball as well. If I have a criticism, it's the predictability of the attacking football that was going on. We were swinging the ball out wide. We were sending in swinging corners. We weren't getting they're meat and drink for any defender. We weren't getting to the byline and crossing the ball and stretching them enough to really create enough chances. One other criticism: it's a long-standing problem with Ireland. We don't have a really creative, gifted central midfielder. So we weren't trying to play through them. We were trying to play around them. But look, all's well that ends well. It was a fantastic draw. And, it was reminiscent of the Jack Charlton era, up and at 'em. There's only 6 games in this group. It's every one of them's a cup final, and you never know if they keep that spirit up for the rest of the tournament. Who knows? We could finish second at least.
Is it important that we do take something out of this game? Is it important that we go to Armenia on Tuesday? Look, we're going to win there. That's sort of a given. We know we're going to get 3 points there.
Let's hope they win. They just assume that they win, right? Because they're expected to win. We have to beat Armenia home and away.
Yeah, but Portugal are they're going to win the group. It's all about finishing second for us, isn't it? Unless Portugal have an absolute meltdown and we get a result against them. A draw against them. Yeah.
You see, that's the thing. I mean, in the European Championships, we were within 2 minutes of beating them in Lisbon. And then we got a 0-0 draw at home. Now they were kind of home and home. But we have a good record against them. Now we did get beaten 3-0. Was it last summer? They absolutely played us off the park. They're a very, very, very good team. There's no doubt about it. But as I said, this is cup final football, and I think it will suit us. So fingers crossed. I think, obviously, if we beat Armenia home and away, then, for argument's sake, if we get a draw away to Hungary, then it's going to matter who can pick up points against Portugal. And I'd fancy us to do that,
Yeah, I do too. Yeah. I do.
The crowd was very, very helpful in the second half. Not so much in the first. I thought it was very, very quiet. Obviously,
Yeah,
nothing to
we were
shout about.
stunned.
The second
We're
half,
all
they
just
really
stunned.
got going, didn't they? They really got going in the second
We
half.
were really, really shocked. I mean, you just could tell this is just not in the script at all, and like teams under previous manager Stephen Kenny and so on, they would have folded, right? I mean, we've seen this so often. Saw them against Greece twice. You go behind and you're just banging on that door, but you don't have enough possession. You're not hurting these teams, whereas we battered them for the entirety of the second half, and we got what we deserved. Great cross in the end from Ryan Manning. To me, he was the man of the match for Ireland. But I just don't want to see Matt Doherty in another Irish shirt. Sorry,
I don't want to see Matt. I think Matt Doherty should have been retired a long time ago. He does my head in. He did at Tottenham, and he does it. I don't know why he keeps being picked. I don't know. Is he paying somebody at the FAI? Look, here's a couple of grand just to keep me in with the squad. Like,
Who else have we got?
Sorry,
who else have we got?
Yeah, that's the. Well, we do. I mean, I think that if you paid Jake O'Brien a right back, and then my friend of mine said to me, and I think he's right. If you push Nathan Collins into central midfield, you've got that big presence in there, and then we're not short of players in the back line, so you could put, for instance, Jake O'Brien on the right, and then you'd have the two centre halves and Liam Scales and Dara O'Shea, and take him off, put on what do you call him? Casey McAteer, who's I think he's a left-sided midfielder, or even Ogbene on the left as well. But the trouble with Matt Doherty, as well as everything else, he's a right-footed player. And I do not understand why teams play right-footed players at left back, because you don't get any width, because they can't chip the ball. And remember that happened with England as well. They used to they had a right-footed player playing left back, and I mean, these professional footballers, how is it that you can? How can you get paid millions to play the game and only use your weak foot for standing on them? But anyway, look, that's the way of the game.
I just want to ask one very quick question, Philip, if it's okay, about the FAI and at the moment they're going through redundancies.
Yeah,
they're going through restructuring. How damaging is this to the Irish soccer game? Because we need a governing body that we can trust. We need a governing body we know is above and above, and also putting money into the youth side of the game, into the youngsters playing. You look at GAA, you look at rugby. They've put millions and millions of pounds into youth rugby and youth GAA. Soccer doesn't do the same. What does the FAI have to do? And should it be stripped right down to the bare bones and rebuilt again?
I think that first of all, I mean, it is very, very worrying when you look at what's happening with the FAI compared to, say, what's happening with the League of Ireland, which is booming at the moment, and there's a lot of money coming into the clubs through European football. And there are clubs who have excellent youth development systems. My own club, Pats, is one of them. Shamrock Rovers is another, but it's not enough. And the amount of time, there are not enough young players in full-time football, which you're supposed to be by the age of 16 if you want to make it at the elite level in football. We've had this problem for decades. We could have a very good international pipeline of footballers if we could resolve this problem. We have a problem because the FAI is trusted, the government is dragging its heels on funding academies. And like, when you think about the money they put into horse racing and greyhound racing, which are run solely, let's be honest with you, for the benefit of the gambling industry, which has no social good whatsoever. And the FAI is begging the government for €5 million in funding. It's a drop in the ocean. The amount of goodwill that will get for the investment involved would just you get it back so many fold. It's very depressing, Dermot. What's going on? Like, it comes back to, you're asking me, like, why is Matt Doherty still playing? Because we don't have the pipeline of players coming through to say, bye, Matt, you've had your time. And that's the issue. And until they resolve that issue, we're going to be in big trouble internationally in the coming years if we don't get our stuff together. That being said, the clubs themselves are sorting themselves out after decades and decades and decades of underachievement. So it's a bit of a mixed picture when you look at Irish football at the moment.
It is.
Just to move on from that, then works perfectly into the jigsaw. Ronan, you are a season ticket holder at St. Pat's, I believe,
Yeah.
and also you're a Spurs fan. So
Yes.
you're getting it from both directions there. You are very excited, I understand, by the new signing that Spurs have made for next January, the young Mason Melia lad from St. Pat. So maybe you want to fill us in as to what Spurs can expect from Mason when he arrives at N17 next year.
Good question. Well, I have been, as you say, I'm a season ticket holder, as is my son at St. Pat. So I've seen Mason Melia since he broke into the first team when he was 15. I saw him score his very first goal for Pats. He's got 9, I think, or 10 goals this season. What qualities does he have as a player? First of all, he's a brilliant goal scorer. He scores amazing goals. You can see his highlight reels. Look at the goals he got against Waterford and the goals he got against Sligo Rovers. Secondly, he is, for a 17-year-old, very, very strong physically. He gets kicked around by players who are 10 years older than him, and he stands up to it very well. He's very, very good at holding up the play, drawing frees from competing teams. I think he's a very exciting player. I don't think he's blessed with absolutely scorching pace, but he can still cover ground fairly quickly. If you ask me what his weaknesses in his game are, I think his movement in the box could improve a lot. There's time out of number, past players gets to the byline and he's kind of jogging into the penalty area, but that's something that can be worked on. The other thing as well is he's young, but he's mentally fragile too sometimes. Like, he missed a penalty against Strada and the head went down. He didn't score for, I think, 7 games after that. But that's all to be, those are the things that are ironed out. Will he make it at Spurs? Well, you guys know better than me how many young players they take on like this every year. There was a big buzz around Troy Parrott a few years ago. He didn't make it at Spurs, but he's made it at Alkmaar, and he was missing on Saturday night. So I'm wishing Mason Melia the very best of luck. He's the first €1 million player from the League of Ireland, and he certainly won't be the last.
And just finish off the soccer. Sorry, go on. Go on ahead.
I just want to ask one question. On Tottenham, as a Spurs fan, we've had big announcements over the last week. Daniel Levy's left. We had the announcement for the club last night that they've turned down 2 bids. From a Tottenham point of view, how do you feel about Daniel Levy leaving? And from a journalist point of view, what process do you get news from, like, Daniel Levy leaving? Do you get it before? Do you get it as it drops for all of us? What could you explain to people what it's like working in your office when news like Daniel Levy's left Spurs? Is there panic? Can you give people a bit of a explanation what it's like?
Well, I mean, I have to stress I'm not a sports journalist, so I'm not kind of clued into that sports sort of side of things. But I'd have heard it just as everybody else. I was very surprised to hear it, to be honest with you. I'm not sorry. I think you know as well as I do, we've got a world-class stadium which will generate a huge amount of revenue for the club in years to come. We've got a fantastic training facility, a Hotspur Way, etc. And I was reading somewhere yesterday where Spurs is by far the most profitable club in the top 6. Yeah. I think they made £180 million in profit. Yeah. But it's the glory game. It's all about title, and it's all about winning things. And I mean, as long as ENAC is in charge, are they going to open the purse strings? Because like Spurs have the financial resources to be one of the biggest clubs in the world. That's the thing. And also when you think about that stadium, which is really important piece of infrastructure. That is generating a huge amount of money for the club. So I mean, he deserves a lot of credit for all of that. And that's, players come and go, but when you have a stadium like that, it's just incredible. I mean, I'm going back to the League of Ireland. St. Patrick's Athletic Stadium, they've only got a capacity of 5,000. It's a shambles of a ground. The League of Ireland needs to improve its facilities all around. But getting from from that to having a new stadium. It takes such an amount of focus and concentration that he does deserve credit for that. But I think we're in a new area. I think he's taken the club as far as it's going to go at this stage. He's finally won a trophy, but you guys know better than me whether there's going to be any sort of change of regime and the club are actually going to spend some money on these players.
I don't know if St. Pat's would like to send out an SOS to Mr. Levy to come in and put a few million into the club. That would be nice. I don't think you would say no. Sorry.
The problem is there's no shortage of money swilling around the League of Ireland. The problem is for St. Patrick's Athletic is where we are situated. It's a very, very tight ground, Richmond Park. They have to buy all the houses on the row. And I mean, in fairness to Dublin City Council, they've already CPO'd a couple of them. They spent 3 million, so it's all on board. But it's like everything else in Ireland. It's not the money that's the problem. It's not doing things in a timely fashion. It's all the planning permissions, all the rest of that. I mean, the club Pats is 100 years old in 2029. They're talking about having a new stadium by then. I don't know if it's going to happen or not. Bows are supposed to be building a new stadium and haven't turned the ground on that yet. So there's a long way to go. That's why I have some respect for Daniel Levy for what he did with Spurs, because it's so hard to get a new stadium off the ground.
Indeed.
Right. Anyway, I think, Dermot, I'm going to pass it over to you now for the more serious side of the podcast, the events of the world as it's happening at the moment, starting with the presidential election.
Yes. Let me get it up here. Let me see where it is. Here it is. Yes, of course, guys, we are going to the polls in October. I think the 24th of October to vote for our new president. Now, just to give people a little bit of a background, the president in Ireland is not like the president of the United States, and it's slightly different. But Ron, what's your thoughts on it at the moment? We know Mary Lou's not running. She broke that this morning that she's not running for the president. We know Bertie Ahern ruled himself out the end of last week, which I think, for me personally, was thank God for that. I think it's Heather Humphreys. I think it's hers to lose, isn't it?
Yeah. So, we're recording this on the Monday, so tomorrow Fianna Fáil will make its decision as to whether or not to back Jim Gavin for the role. So let's just assume, for argument's sake, and it looks like he will have the numbers, right? So it's going to be a three-way race between Heather Humphreys, Jim Gavin, and Catherine Connolly. I don't see any independents in it at this stage. I'd like to see an independent in it.
Yeah.
Marie Steen, who's this kind of very conservative sort of Catholic immigration skeptic wing, she may get an Oireachtas nomination from 20 members, and that would make it an interesting vote. But let's just say, realistically, it's between the three candidates, and I'm just assuming here that Jim Gavin wins tomorrow. I know Jim Gavin. I've met him many times. He's a very, very good guy. He's a very impressive man. You only have to look at his CV. First GA manager to bring 5 All-Ireland titles in a row. He did that for Dublin. He has 6 All-Irelands. He served the country as an army officer. He was in charge of an Irish contingent in Chad. He's a pilot. He works for the Irish Aviation Authority. He was the chair of the government task force on a directly elected mayor for Dublin, which his recommendations for a directly elected mayor were never put into fruition. And then, of course, he turned around Gaelic football from the puke football back to something that's worth watching at the moment. So he has a very interesting CV. The problem with him is we don't know what his politics are at all. And this is a problem because Micheál Martin's attitude has been, well, trust my judgment on this. Jim Gavin is our candidate. And I think a lot of members of the Fianna Fáil party, some of whom I spoke to, have really taken umbrage at that, right? They don't like being told what to do. They wanted an open contest. Billy Kelleher is giving it to them. So it'll be very interesting if Jim Gavin gets the nomination, assuming that he does. We haven't heard from him. We don't know what kind of vision he has for the presidency, and I don't think that's good enough, frankly.
Philip, I mean, where are you on it? I mean, look, I agree with Rowan that it's not good enough for Jim Gavin's not come out and said what his policies are, what his politics is. Micheál Martin saying, look, trust me, I wouldn't trust him as far as I can throw him. Sorry, Micheál Martin, but I would never trust you after what happened with the with you being in the government when you nearly sent us to the dogs with the on the financial front, and then you coming out and saying I wasn't there. So sorry, I don't trust a word you say. Sorry about that. Any Fianna Fáil supporters watching, I do apologise. But where are you on it, Philip? Where are you on in this presidential election?
Yeah, it's a very good point Ronan made about Jim Gavin. Sort of no one knows where he's coming from politically, but he is certainly guaranteed a couple of million votes in Dublin, regardless of what politics he has, because he's a hero to the GA fans in Dublin and across the country. So he's going to poll very well if he does get the nod to do it. Your man Kelleher is going to be very aggrieved if he is left the sidelines, having worked all his life in politics for the local people and whatever. So, but politics is a dirty game, and it's going to go down to that. Personally, I have a great affinity for Heather Humphreys. I worked in the area in Monaghan, the area that she was she represented for a long time, and she has done an awful lot of good work for that particular area, and I think she'd be a really, really good president. Whether we want it'll go down to party politics, whether I don't want another woman in the park, I don't know where it's going to go, but I think it's between the way it's looking at the minute, probably between Gavin and herself, if Jim Gavin gets the nod. But I'd be for Heather Humphreys.
Yeah, I worked with Heather Humphreys in 2016 on my book on. I edited the Centenary Ireland Remembers 1916, which was the sort of official book for the 1916 commemorations, and I found her an absolute rock of sense. And you have to remember, before she went into government as a minister, nobody knew who she was. She was a very kind of low key backbench TD. I think she's a very impressive woman. She's obviously she's a rock of common sense, and I think she understands the role of the presidency, and that is really important. I mean, you see the polls in the Sunday Independent. People want a president who understands the role. This is not an executive role. This is more. There are important functions that a president has, but they have no say in the day-to-day running of the country. They cannot have a foreign policy that is separate from the government. They have to take instructions from the government on what our foreign policy should be. And I felt that Michael D. Higgins has overstepped the mark on a few occasions in relation to that. So people are looking for a president that sort of understands the role. I think she would do that. I think Jim Gavin probably would as well. But again, we don't know where he stands on many issues. In terms of Catherine Connolly, I think that the fact that Mary Lou McDonald is not in the race is good news for her. But she's if you're looking at a united left vote, I think she might have a chance. But because it's a proportional representation system, there's going to be, if there's only three candidates, whoever polls the least, their vote's going to be distributed. So I'd imagine that if one of the sort of centre-right candidates, either Jim Gavin or Heather Humphreys, goes out first, that they will transfer en masse to the other candidate, and I don't think Catherine Connolly will get elected in that regard.
No.
It's probably just as well for Bertie Ahern's sake he's not going forward, because I can imagine if he did, the whole election process would be digging up stuff that happened to him back in the day. The dig out should be mentioned a few times,
I just don't understand why he thought he was going to be a credible candidate. I mean, people have the memories of what happened during the economic crash in this country are still very, very raw for a lot of people. And you would be digging all that stuff up again. And not only would it reflect badly on him, it would reflect badly on Fianna Fáil, because Fianna Fáil don't want people to be reminded of what happened. And certainly Micheál Martin, who was part of that government between 2008 and 2011, he does not want people remembering that. So I don't think Bertie Ahern was ever a starter as a presidential candidate. But the party should have handled this better. They should have told him from the beginning, Bertie, it's not going to be you. But they dragged it out for far too long, and I can understand why he's upset about that.
Yeah, I can, but I agree with you. I think it would have been opening a can of worms we did not need opening, and I'm sure Michael Martin should have, as leader, should have been a bit more strong with his leadership, saying, right, you're not running, end of, put it out there, let's get it, finished with. But and she said he let it dragged it on and on, and we're left with him making the statement, I'm not running, instead of Michael Martin taking control of the situation and saying he's
That's
not
it.
running.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good. But look, it's going to be an interesting battle coming up. I'm sure you're going to be very busy as they crisscross the country, trying to get votes. I think I agree with Philip. I think I'll be voting for Heather Humphreys. I think myself as well. I think you are right. She's a very good minister. She has been a very good minister for social protection as well. And she said to yourself, Rona, a very quiet TD as well. We never hear her in the news. She gets on, does her job. So I think for me, that would be it. Now, you were talking about Michael D. Higgins and being outspoken. One of the things he has been outspoken about is Gaza. At the moment, Israel, for the last thing I read on the news, I think I know it's true now, but Israel now occupy 40% of Gaza at the moment. There is a famine happening over there. There is people starving. Where are you on this? Ireland is one of the few countries that have acknowledged a Palestine state. Do you think that was a good thing by the Irish government to do at the time? Because they were one of the first, weren't they, to declare?
Well, actually, I think it's more correct to say they were one of the first in Western Europe to declare. I mean, I think the majority of countries in the world have acknowledged a Palestinian state. And France said they're going to do it soon. Canada are going to do it soon. I don't know what difference all of this makes. I'm in complete first of all, I think we were right to recognize a Palestinian state, recognize the fact that there is only one solution to this, which is a two-state solution that's been proffered. So that solution's over 30 years now. We know in Ireland that, you know, you've got so many false starts when it comes to peace processes. You had Sunningdale in 1973, and then 25 years later, basically what was agreed with Sunningdale was agreed at during the Good Friday Agreement, and thousands of people had died in the meantime. So I'm in complete despair at the moment because I'm not really sure what leverage any of us have over Israel, unless there was an agreed position from European countries, the EU, to impose tough sanctions on Israel. I think that might make a difference. I definitely think they shouldn't be in UEFA. I definitely don't think they should be in the World Cup. They shouldn't be in the Eurovision at this stage. Unfortunately, because the World Cup is in the United States next year, I don't think FIFA are going to try and ban Israel from these games. But if they were, at least it would give an indication to civil society in Israel where most of the world is at in terms of what they're at. But I don't know what the solution is here until the EU gets its acts together and gets a joint position. But as we know, Germans are very reluctant for historical reasons to take that step of imposing sanctions on Israel, and there are other countries like Hungary and so on. So I'm in a state of despair about all of this. To be honest with you, there's no easy solution to this.
I think we all are, aren't we, Philip? We see what happens on the news. We see the pictures. We see the bombings. We see what they've done. Israel, nobody holds Israel to account. And America is the biggest obstacle in the way, I think, to this as well.
Of course, yeah.
They're saying one thing. They're saying one thing on one. Donald Trump saying one thing one day, and then he says something completely different another day. I know you're not his biggest fan, Philip, to be fair. You don't have pictures of him on your wall, or you don't kiss his picture goodnight. But
I better say
he
nothing
could
to
stop
that.
it. Yeah, that's right. He is the man that could stop it. But why won't he stop it?
Well, he has. In fairness, they have put forward proposals which would see the release of all the hostages on one day in return for the release of hundreds of prisoners from the jail. I mean, the solution to this is, in my opinion, is for some kind of an international Arab force to take over in Gaza. I think obviously Israel is the biggest culprit here, but we have to state that Hamas is a disaster for the Palestinian people, has been a disaster for the last 2 decades. There was opinion polls there last week that only 4% of Palestinians want Hamas in charge with whatever solution. In fact, more people want the Israelis in charge. They're a disaster for Gaza. They should have spent the last 20 years trying to build a decent society for the people of Palestine. Instead, they've spent that time and the money fomenting revenge against Israel. And it's not going to work. I mean, this is the thing. You're never going to get to the stage. You're never going to defeat Israel. So why not just realize that you have to live in peace with your neighbors, whether you like it or not, and work from there. That's what happened with the Good Friday Agreement. Lots of people in Republican circles were not happy that the idea of a united Ireland had to be abandoned temporarily. But like, the peace process has worked in this country, and you know, only a peace process is going to work in Gaza as well.
Yeah,
I think the biggest problem I have with it is we get the United Nations coming out with a statement that there is famine in Gaza. And then Israel, oh, no, there's not. No, there's not. It's completely denying what the United Nations are saying. Well, they're the ones that are holding up the aid trucks from getting in. And one question I'm going to ask, Israeli TV must be really heavily censored. They must not be showing any of the obviously destruction that's going on in Gaza on their TV screens. Because certainly if that was shown, surely there's enough decent-minded people in the country to say, hang on, enough is enough, and try and stop Netanyahu. I know there's demonstrations against him, but they don't seem to do anything or get anywhere.
Well, you know, it was an interesting point made recently by Bob Geldof that, you know, there are a lot of people in Israel who are very perturbed about what their own government is doing in Gaza. I mean, you only have to look at the Haaretz, which is a left-of-center newspaper in Israel, to see that there is a lot of opposition to what's happening. I mean, Israel is a very, very divided society between right and left. There are people in Israel who despise Netanyahu, and more than we could even ever imagine. And I would recommend, if anybody wants to read a different perspective from the Israeli point of view, there is a guy called Oz, O-Z. He's the son of the famous Israeli novelist, and he's a professor of history. The first name escapes me, but you can Google it afterwards. And he's written a very interesting essay in the Financial Times about a liberal perspective on the war in Gaza. And he's basically saying that, you know, most of us in Israel don't agree what the government is doing. But the question is, you know, why are there not riots on the street? Why is there not civil disobedience in Israel to the Israeli government? And the reality is if your government is perpetrating war crimes, you are regarded as complicit in it, whether you like it or not. And you see that in Russia as well. You know, there may well be opposition to the war, but as long as that opposition is in people's private rooms or whatever, it makes no difference. So I'm in complete despair as to what's going to happen here.
I just want to ask one question before we move on to Ukraine, because that is a very good point about what's happening in Ukraine, Russia, what Donald Trump's happening as well. Other countries, should they look to Ireland because of the peace process, because of the Good Friday Agreement, and what we were able to achieve?
Yeah, I think they should. Yeah,
and because also, I was going to say also with the United Ireland. I mean, I hope to see one in my lifetime. I don't think I will, but I would love to see one. Do you think we can get there peacefully and naturally now to United Ireland? Do you think it's now going to be in it's now all what we've gone through the war bit? We're going to get there naturally anyway.
Yeah, just getting back to your point, Dermot, about what people can learn from the Good Friday Agreement, right? Fundamentally, the issues are the same. There are nationalists and unionists who share the same piece of land and have different visions as to that where that land should be in the future. So it's the same with Palestine and Israel as well. They share the same basic land. the Israelis and the Palestinians. Palestinians want an independent state. Some Palestinians want an end to Israel. That's never going to happen. So you have to make these painful compromises that really not everybody's happy. Republicans had to drop their dream of a united Ireland. Unionists had to acknowledge the fact that, the idea of a unionist state is dead in the water, and that they're going to have to share power with their nationalist neighbours, whether they like it or not. Has that agreement worked perfectly? No, of course it hasn't. But we've had peace for 25 years, and that's the most important thing. And in terms of, I think that there are lessons there to be learned for Israel, for the Israel and Palestinian conflict. You're asking me about the chances of a united Ireland in our lifetime. I don't see it happening, because the reason being that the Good Friday Agreement has a clause in it that the only person mandated to call a border poll is the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. And he or she can only do that in the case of where they feel that there will be a majority in favour of a united Ireland. We're not near that figure yet. I mean, if you look at some of the polls the Irish Times has done in conjunction with Aaron's, which is looking at all of these issues of All Ireland. I mean, there is about 37% support for United Ireland. There's about 45% support for the status quo. And what I find really interesting about all of this is that the actual vote in favour of United Ireland is less than the combined nationalist vote. So there are nationalists in the north who want to remain part of the United Kingdom. Why? I don't know. Because, I mean, the Republic of Ireland is a more prosperous state by far, and social benefits are more. But you can't underestimate a lot of the things, like, for instance, the fact that you have in the north free GP care service. I pay €60 for my doctor, and people up the north are looking at that and they're going, I'm not paying €60 to be part of United Ireland every time I got to go see a doctor,
No, that's so true. Philip, I'll let you start this next. Are you still okay for time, Ron?
Yeah.
I'll let you start this next section off. I know you're going to love this bit.
Well, I think, I mean, I think what's happened in over the last few weeks in Ukraine since the summit meeting in Alaska between Trump and Putin is that the Russian media and the spin doctors have absolutely lorded it over America, and they've made, I mean, it was Putin 6, Trump 0. I think that's the best way you could put a scoreline on that one. And then yesterday, you see, they launched the biggest ever attack on Kiev and other cities. I don't know how many cruise missiles they launched, but does that sound like a man that wants to finish a war? It sounds like a man that's been playing Donald Trump for a fool for this last number of years. We don't know what the attraction is. I mean, to me, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin is like some teenager looking up adoringly at our Boyzone or Westlife poster. Actually meeting your hero and actually looking like you're about to kiss their hand, basically. So I think Putin has played a blinder on this. He has no intention of finishing the war. Trump keeps saying, I'm going to do something in 2 weeks. These 2 weeks seem to be interminable. There's never anything done at the end of 2 weeks. He's now talking about maybe doing sanctions again. But what can America do to rein Putin in? And it's the question,
I think that I know I'm loath to give Donald Trump any credit for anything, right? But let's just say, right, he's sincere. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say he's sincere about ending this war, which is what we all want. We want an end to this war. The problem has been, as you say, Philip, that we had this meeting in Alaska. It's clear that the Israelis are not in any way, the Russians are not serious about ending this conflict, despite the fact that they have suffered enormous casualties, over 1 million men dead, wounded, and taken prisoner. So all you can hope is that Trump sees through Putin now, and that he starts imposing sanctions not only on Russia, extra sanctions not only on Russia, but on countries like, for instance, India. He's imposed a 50% tariff on Indian goods because they're still importing Russian oil. It doesn't seem to make a blind bit of difference. So Well, you hope that if Trump is the impressionable person that he was, that the Western leaders who are going, we don't know which ones who are going to Washington this week, that they will make an impression upon him that basically Putin is making a fool of him and it's time to act. So I'm not giving up hope here. I mean, I think also the fact that Trump is now willing to sell American weaponry to Europe to pass on to the Ukrainians is good. The fact that he's insisting that European countries, including our own, actually pay for their own defense is also a good thing in the long term. I don't think, by the way, Philip, I don't think Russia is winning this war. I don't care what anybody says. If you look at the situation on the ground, it's barely moved. Their summer offensive was a failure. They are still losing over 1,000 men a day. I mean, there's a lot of commentary here that either their economy is going to crash or they're going to run out of men by next year. Obviously, Ukraine is also in a very, very difficult situation, but the Ukrainians have been very, very smart in the way they have begun to target on a sustained basis the basis of Russia's economy, which is oil and gas. They also have this new long-range cruise missile called the Flamingo, which the Russians are powerless to shoot down. So, it's still. I still think Ukraine is in this fight. I pray to God that they eventually win. The problem has been as well is that I don't expect that the Ukrainians will ever cede any territory to the Russians. Maybe Donetsk, but I mean the Russian demands are absolutely insane. They want the 4 oblasts that they don't even fully occupy. They basically want Ukraine to relinquish land that's in Ukrainian hands. I don't know what they're playing at here. I genuinely don't, because they're not winning this war.
No.
And this is what happens when you have a brutal dictatorship that doesn't care about the welfare of its own people, that's accountable to absolutely nobody. If Putin was in charge of a Western democracy and there had been a million casualties, he'd have been out the door a long time ago. But he's not.
And that sort of begs me onto that question then. How come there hasn't been a coup in Russia? Because, look, I was watching a documentary the other night about the coup in 91 that eventually ousted Gorbachev and the Yeltsin, in, who I think is the most funniest leader ever to take power. I think he was just comedy gold. As a young teenager, watching Yeltsin dancing on the stage, have something on vodka, right? It's the most funniest thing ever. But the serious point is, how come there hasn't been a coup? And do you think there will be a coup?
There ought to be one. I don't know whether there will be or not. It is extraordinary. I mean, where's is it von Stauffenberg? What was the guy who remember the Wolf's Lair in 1944 when they tried to kill Hitler? I'm surprised myself that there hasn't been a coup against Putin. I can only imagine that, number one, the people he has around, his loyalists, think he's on the right track, or two, they can't get near him, or three, they can't get enough support to get near him. I don't know why. He has very, very tight security, as you can imagine, and he doesn't trust too many people. I've heard, for instance, that when he does all of those passing out parades with the Russian soldiers, they don't have any bullets in their guns. Even some of his bodyguards don't have bullets in their guns in case they turn it on him. So, no, I agree with you. I don't understand why somebody hasn't slipped a little bit of plutonium into his salmon pasta for the evening.
I think there's a case too. I think there's a case too. Like if you oppose Putin, I would certainly recommend not staying in a high floor in a hotel, because most of them seem to end up flying out the window. And going back to the losses in the Ukraine campaign, I mean, that is nothing new for Russia. I mean, look at World War II under Stalingrad, for example. I mean, anyone joining the Russian army, you're a cannon fodder. There was absolutely no regard given to your human life, and that's still the way under Putin.
Yeah, absolutely is. I mean, it's a fundamental difference between Russian and Western societies. Is this complete disregard for human life? Now, if you go back to the Second World War, the Soviet Union was fighting an existentialist war of annihilation against Nazi Germany. Germany was camped on Russian soil, and they were driven off. But I think the better analogy is with the First World War, where basically Russia invaded Eastern Europe, invaded Poland, invaded the Austro-Hungarian Empire. They lost 2 million dead in that war, and they ended up surrendering in 1917. So I would be kind of hopeful that I think the way this war might end is a mutiny, possibly in along the front lines. The other way is that Putin runs out of men. He's not run out of them yet, but from what I've heard in Russia at the moment, they have to pay more and more money to get recruitment. He's reluctant to introduce conscription because then he'll have to go after people in men of military age in cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg who are still walking around as if nothing happened. So I'm still hopeful. I don't think. I mean, this war is going to end up in a stalemate. But I don't think Ukraine is going to lose this war.
No, I don't think so
Hopefully
either.
not.
Ronan, I want to talk a little bit about your book, your new book you've just written, the biography, of course, of Sean Lemass, the former Taoiseach of Ireland. Yeah. And I just wanted to firstly ask you, was Sean Lemass the big innovator of Ireland? Was he the man that laid the foundations for what led after him? Because he did put a big influence onto building houses, infrastructure, and stuff like that when he took over. And am I right to say he did take over from Dev, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
So there was a big culture shock from what Dev had as Taoiseach to Sean Lemass when he finished as Taoiseach. So can you explain to people in one word what Sean Lemass' legacy should be?
Prosperity. That's it in a word, right? So just to explain to your viewers there, I have a book coming out next spring. It's provisionally titled Sean Lemass in His Own Words, the long lost memoir of Ireland's most popular Taoiseach. So basically I've edited 23 hours of recordings that Lemass did in the 1960s with a view to being published in book format. That never happened for various different reasons. So I have taken the tapes and the transcripts that were in UCD and I've parlayed them into a book, which is basically Lemass in his own words. And it's a very, very candid memoir of his life in times as a politician. But to get back to your point, Dermot, yes, Lemass is a transformational figure in Irish history. He takes over in 1959 from Dev. The year previous to that, you had the first economic development plan, which overturned 40 years of sort of economic orthodoxy in Ireland, which was basically a protectionist model of for Irish industry and so on. It put Ireland on a path towards embracing free trade, international and attracting international industry into Ireland. I think that has worked beyond our wildest dreams, despite all the problems we have. We're one of the most prosperous countries in the world at the moment, and I think Lemass played an outsized role in setting us off down that path.
Philip, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a labour of love you were doing there, Ronan. It must have been... How long did it take you to
well,
actually...
It took me, if you did the editing process itself, took me 6 months. I wouldn't call it a labour of love because I'll tell you what, Philip, I think this book is very important, going to be very important to our understanding of Irish history. And he was a brilliant man. He's a brilliant mind. He's eminently quotable. He gives a lot of lessons in how to run a country and how to run a business that pertain to this day. I mean, in it, for instance, he says that as far as he was concerned, the British were never committed Europeans and only went into the common market. We're only looking to go into the common market basically to destroy it or to rein it in. And how true that was when you look at the 2016 Brexit referendum, the stuff he says in the book that for instance, Europe cannot continue to depend on the United States for its military umbrella, that we have to defend ourselves. I mean, this is, I'm reading it and I'm thinking these, what he's saying pertains to the present day as much as it did then. So I do think that I'm hopeful that this book will be a success, because this book isn't about me. I'm editing this. This is about Sean Lemass and his thoughts on the world and his look back on his career. He's very, very critical of De Valera. He's very critical of a lot of his contemporaries, and he's very critical of himself. He admits when he gets it wrong. He has the self-confidence as a politician to say, I didn't get this right. We made mistakes. And I think I think political life would be a lot better if politicians actually fessed up sometimes and said, we got this wrong.
And if I could just say something before you go in there, Ron, I just want to mention one of your other books. Like, I guess, I had the pleasure of accompanying you on a tour last year of the Flanders and Somme battlefields. And
Yeah.
your book, Wherever the Firing Line Extends, a history of Ireland and the First World War and Somme in particular. I mean, you're obviously, the First World War is one of your, if want to about specialized subjects.
Yeah.
But can I just say, I mean, that is the most informative book about that era of the First World War that I ever read, and I can recommend it to anybody if you can get hold of a copy. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you, Philip. And I do, as you say, run tours to the Western Front, GTI travel every year, and well, you can speak for it better than me. But I mean, I think it's a very profound experience for people who go on that tours to see the scale of death and suffering that happened in the First World War. Wars are terrible things, as we know, but also, this is a tour it's bespoke. It's around the Irish experience of the First World War, which, as we both know, was ignored for a long time in Irish history. And it is remarkable, the sort of cultural, historical legacy that the Irish have left along the Western Front. And I'm really, really proud to be able to run a tour that showcases all of that.
I think what was specific on the tour we went on was the fact that some of the people on the tour actually found the grave, or found the mention of their relatives on some of the various memorials in the place, which was a great, boost to see someone actually go that distance and find their relative, which they've probably been looking for
It'd
years.
be very, very emotional for people.
Very emotional,
to be sort of, I've seen people crying at the graves of great uncles and so on, because there's all that family history, and it just brings it back to them. This is one of my own, and here they lie in a foreign field. It's incredibly moving, I think. It really is.
Just one more question on the book and Lemass before we move on to our last subject. His son-in-law, who I'm very much look. I love my Irish history. I'm related to Michael Collins way down my family tree, so I'm very much on the Mick Collins side of the story, as Philip well knows. But Charlie Haughey, a controversial figure in more than one. That is an understatement. I don't know how to describe him right.
Yeah.
We are going to, just very quick, we are going to revert a show on Gubu. But as a journalist, working in that time, since working with governments, how much has it changed from the Charlie Haughey time to now, as you as a journalist, when you're like interviewing the Taoiseach or the Taoiseach? How much has it changed over that 20, 30, 40 years?
Well, it's changed an awful lot. I mean, I don't know how, when you look back on people like Charles Haughey and so on, like social media has made a massive, massive difference to how we go about things. The interesting thing that social media has done and the internet has done, and I think this is actually a good thing, is previously politicians needed the media, which is, from the Latin medium, they needed that filter to get their message out there. Now they don't need it, although they still use it. Obviously, they still use mainstream media. So politicians can bypass the media now to get their message out there and to defend themselves and so on. I'll give you one very quick example. There was a time when John Prescott in the UK, he was traduced in, I think, The Sun or something like that, he had no recourse to a response to whatever they wrote about him. Nowadays, a politician can go on social media and say this is a lie or whatever. And I think it means that politicians are more accountable to their public. But I also think it means that the mainstream media are more accountable to the public. And, we get a lot more feedback about what we're doing, what we're not doing. Some of it's fair, some of it's unfair. But I think it's to the benefit of the mainstream media that we're being held to account for the way we do things. So that's probably the main thing that has happened nowadays. And, would Charles Haughey have survived many of the scandals that he was involved in 30 years ago with social media? I doubt it, to be honest.
I don't think so.
But so nowadays you have it's a completely different sort of realm of accountability.
It is. Philip, do you want anything else before we?
No.
Is there anything else you want to talk about before we?
No. I think we've covered it all. I think.
Can I just talk about Charles Haughey for a second, if you don't mind?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. The thing about the tragedy about Charlie Haughey is that he was a transformational politician in a lot of ways, in the same way that Lemass was. Now, if you go back to, say, his first two terms in government in between 79 and 81 and 82, that was not a good time. The country was on its knees, and obviously you had several elections. But if you go back to 87 and you have the things he did then, like the National Partnership Agreement, which was to get the unions and the employers and all these bodies on the same page, recognizing that the country was in a lot of trouble. And that worked brilliantly. I mean, you can trace the Celtic Tiger period from then. He set up the IFSC, the Irish Financial Services Centre, and Ireland became an international hub of business. He was behind the transformation of Temple Bar and so on. So, I mean, this is unfortunately what, if you look at him solely in policy terms, and you look at that second term of his between 87 and 92, he got a lot done. But then it's very hard to divorce that from all the rest of the stuff.
Yeah.
But that's the tragedy. Whereas with Lemass, there's no personal side to him. There's no personal. He's not involved. He seems to me, unless nobody's ever come up with any evidence I can see for him being anything other than irreproachable in his approach to politics.
And also, he was am I right to say he was involved in the 1916 Rising as well?
Yes,
if I'm right to say, and the War of Independence.
Yeah, he was involved. He was involved in the Easter Rising. He spoiler alert, but he killed a man on Bloody Sunday, and then he was incarcerated. He was there in the Four Courts at the start of the Civil War. I mean, you just can't make this guy up. I mean, he's like that character in Woody Allen's Zelig, who keeps turning up at important events in history, So, I think he's a fascinating character, and I hope people will find this to be a fascinating book.
I really can't wait to read that book. Philip knows how much I love my Irish history. Just on Charlie Haughey, my quick view on him, he's a very complex character.
Yeah.
And I think there's many faces to Charlie Haughey. Yes, he done a lot of good. I think he was also laid the foundations for the Good Friday Agreement as well.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Also give the first free bus pass to pensioners. So he done an awful lot of good. But you are right. You cannot divorce what he did in Gubu and the scandals and the
Chauvet shirts.
And the corruption he led in government through him. Not really Albert Reynolds, as far as I know, but definitely Bertie Ahern. And so on. Philip, I mean, you may have had many discussions on this over the years. We are doing something on Gubu as our next episode. Me and Philip are going to talk all about Gubu and the times being. I was only a young kid at the time. Philip was working in Dublin, I think, as a bank manager, declining Charlie Haughey's latest overdraft, as I always say.
Jesus. Withdraw that comment.
Sorry. It was Bertie Ahern, was it? All right, it was him. Okay. No, seriously though, Philip. I mean, it is quite remarkable, isn't it, that it goes part as Irish history that we went through this as a country. And you look at we're only a young country, aren't we? We're only a young state. We're only 100 years old. We're very young compared to England or America or most of Europe. And I think we've done so much in 100 years as a state than most countries have done in their lifetime.
I think the best way of putting it, we're punching in weight big time.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. The thing is that I think you're right in the sense that we're very hard on ourselves. I think a lot of the time, if you look at other countries, after 100 years, they never got as far as us. I mean, look at America was in 1876 was recovering from the American Civil War. France is the same, 1889, and so on. So I mean, it's we are hard on ourselves. Well, maybe we should be. Maybe we should expect high standards of public life in Ireland. We should expect our politicians to be irreproachable. It's no harm to have high standards and to be hard on ourselves sometimes, but I just think sometimes we're too hard on ourselves. That's just my thoughts. A lot of people won't agree, but there you go.
Philip, anything you want to end off on?
No, I think we've covered it. We've a great more range of topics today than I thought we would actually get through. So it's been really, really good.
And I do withdraw that comment about you and Charlie Hyde.
That's all right.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm so grateful to be on it. And anytime I can help with anything, just let me know. And are you just doing Google yourselves, guys, or are you getting in some guests and so on?
Well, we're hoping to get you in. You're very welcome.
All right, I'd be happy to help out. I tell you, I have a colleague as well who's very good on all of this stuff, which is Harry McGee. Harry's written a book about Malcolm MacArthur being caught in the home of the Attorney General. Yes.
Can I just say, when I read that first as a kid, as a young lad, as a young kid, you don't take notes of politics, right? But as I become a teenager and I'm learning about Irish history and Irish politics and that, I could never, even now, I cannot get my head round that. How did nobody copy he was there? I mean, for God's sake. And then he lets him fly off to America, the Attorney General then. And then he's thinking, maybe I should get him to come back. I'm just thinking, how did it is so comical. If you made a comedy sketch out of it, I think it would be a bestseller.
Unprecedented, bizarre, and unbelievable. As Charlie I himself says. So yeah, look, I'd be happy to do that, guys. Let me know whenever suits you, and I'll be.
It's very good.
That'd be brilliant, and we will do that live, guys. That will be a live. It won't be pre-recorded. It will be live. But Ronan, thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Where can people actually find you? Sorry. Where can people find you, Ronan? Where can people find you?
Well, I'm on various different social media platforms, but the best one is Twitter. I'm at McGreevy, RMCGREEVY 1301. That's my Twitter handle. Yeah.
And it
can I also say what a mean guitar player this guy is. How'd you get that? I'm trying to tempt Philip to go in with his gorilla suit as Phil Collins to do In the Air Tonight. Now I'm still trying to convince him to do that. But he's turning me down. So if you can help me, Ronan, get this man into that gorilla suit and he can sit there, dude. I swear to God, he'd do a brilliant Phil Collins. I swear to God, he would.
I agree.
There's a bit of Roger Taylor about him as well as Quinn. I can see Philip in his younger days being a bit like Roger Taylor back in the day. There's a little bit yet.
What about Keith Moon?
He's definitely a Keith Moon, all right. He's definitely.
I don't think kicking over my drum kit go down too well in Darky Kelly's now. So
anyway. But just very quickly, also, Ronan, you are a journalist for the Irish Times, is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, Philip knows I'm very big into journalism. I love doing this. our Tottenham channel because I've always wanted to be a sports journalism. Just very quickly, to any young people that want to get into journalism and want to get into news journalism, any advice could you give them, people? What one bit of advice would you give them?
I would say to read all you can about everything, but also to be multi-skilled. So be able to shoot and edit video, be able to shoot and edit podcasts, familiarize yourself with all the different programs that are necessary for media nowadays, like for instance Final Cut Pro or some of those different video channels. They're all the same basically, but they're just different emphasis on different things. I would say just be the way the media world is going at the moment, you have to be kind of entrepreneurial. You got to be able to turn your hand to different things, like what you guys are doing there. You see, I do think, I mean, we live in a world where there's a democratization of the media landscape, which I think is a great thing, where you have people like yourselves who may not be professional journalists as such, but bring a level of professionalism to your analysis of Spurs and so on and so forth. You probably know more of what's going on than a lot of the journalists. So I would say that, be entrepreneurial and, and try and be as diverse as possible in the media landscape arena.
I wouldn't call me professional, more as Philip would call me, more delusional than professional when it comes to Tottenham. But I take this podcast very seriously. We both do. It's a second love, I think, for both of me and Philip. We love doing news, and we talk about it, don't we, Philip, quite a lot of what's going on. So we thought, we do a political channel, and it hasn't got controversial yet, but give it time, it will do. Mr. Brady, when can people expect to see us back live?
I would say this to become we're trying to do a weekly program. Because there's so much going on at the minute, like there's so much content.
Yeah, there is.
Another week. But Ronan, thank you very much for coming on today. And again, we'd love to have you on again. And
consider it a pleasure. And I'll come back when the book comes out and we can talk about it further. All right.
Great. Absolutely. Yeah.
Love that. And we definitely will get you on to the Tottenham channel as well and talk all things Spurs, because I'm sure you have an awful lot to say on that subject as well. So thank you so much for coming on.
All right, guys. See you now. Bye-bye.
See you now.
Thank you. Guys,
that is it. That is Dermot's Democratic Ranks. Do have to change the title of the name. We do not live in East Germany. I can assure you that. If so, Philip will build in the Berlin Wall very quickly between Leitrim and Wexford. But Philip, what a guest. What an absolute guest. What a man.
Yeah, you're still
I know.
Yeah,
haven't finished yet. Just get your views on him. What a man. What a man.
Yeah. I mean, the guy is such a, I mean, as I said, as I briefly mentioned there, I went on one of the tours that he guides in France. I mean, the guy is an absolute walking encyclopedia on the First World War. Unbelievable. And we saw things there that really open your eyes. And he's also written the book about the Don Tidy kidnapping down here near Ballinamore back in the 80s, and also a book about the assassination of Sir Henry Wilson, who was the chief instigator of 1916. So a very, very, very intelligent guy, knowledge to beat the band, and it's great that he's coming with us and he's back onto us again.
Yeah, that's great talking about Google. But guys, thank you so much for watching. We will be back next week, I think, Philip.
Yeah.
Unless anything breaks during the week, unless anything majorly breaks, like a prime minister resigning, or Philip winning the lottery, or me becoming president of Ireland. Apart from that, we'll be back next week. Thank you all for watching. Hit the like, hit the subscribe if you can for more political rants coming. For me being a little bit, I would say I'm the more non-controversial to my co-host. How can I describe you? No comments.
No comments.
On that bombshell. See you later. Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye-bye.